All right, Happy New Year. It's 2023. I have been very, very hardworking at creating what I hope to be an informative and insightful presentation for you all today. Um, for those of you who already have the 2023 Sidereal Astrology Guide, even if you've pre-ordered, you should have your PDF. Um, and I tweeted about this, so you may not have heard, but the monthly summary for December was my way of recapping 2023, but also meant to be read at the beginning of 2023. So that's what I'm going to start with today. Hopefully I didn't mess up these slides. And let me just pull up an alternative just in case I find that I messed up these slides. So hold on. Because I just decided to do it this way at the last minute. So give me a second. Oh, here's my last. No, let me do it this way. Okay, just in case I jacked up these slides, we've got another version to read here. All right. The most recent few years have had us mired in the muck of the earth signs, separated from our will to demand and impact change. We believed that the way that things were was the way that they would always be. So conforming was the only way to survive. Be who they told you you were. Do what you could with what you had available. No use in demanding more when it seemed to be clear that there was not enough. Take it all at face value with no wonder about what lies beyond the exterior. Everything being what it was as it should be. What power did we have to make changes? Machines too big to dismantle must have an inherent right to exist, if only because their complexity and weight cannot be deconstructed with a single hand. That would require allegedly impossible cooperative action. Then came Jupiter in Aries in April of this year, baptizing us with the fire of the entitlement to impact change. With this fire baptism came a mandate. Might we see this mandate as a divine ordinance? The divinely given opportunity to disassociate our actions, our identities, and our beliefs from authorities that claim to be omnipotent? When Moses was given his divine ordinance, it was announced by the fire of a burning bush, a bush that was burning yet was not consumed. That was enough for him to recognize that he had encountered something supernatural. At that bush, he was given a vision of liberation. His encounter with the divine would be the fire that fueled the eventual exodus of the Israelites from bondage. Harriet Tubman, often called Moses, saw the vision too. She had been to the mountaintop and seen the promised land, the same mountaintop that Martin Luther King Jr. saw. Moses brought his people out of Egypt, but he never saw the promised land. Harriet Tubman brought many out of enslavement, but into Black codes, which became Jim Crow. King began his freedom fight aiming for Black folks' integration into the larger white society, but soon he realized that he was integrating Black folks into a burning house. Who has seen this promised land? Who has been to this mountaintop? Who now holds the vision, the supernatural fuel of a divine ordinance towards change? Pharaoh eventually let Moses's people go. Lincoln eventually signed the Emancipation Proclamation. President Lyndon B. Johnson eventually signed the Voting Rights Act. But even the Israelites fell prey to the intoxication of imperialism and domination. They wanted their own king. Post-Reconstruction era Black folks sang the song of anti-Blackness to each other with more conviction than the composers and lyricists of it did. And post-civil rights era America demanded the adoption of class striving as an alleged escape from all kinds of marginalization and domination. Many of us have become authorities in institutions as a means to achieving our goals of affluence and hoarding. With the validation of those institutions, we carry out and continue the cultural indoctrination we were subject to. We see it as our duty, our right, to align ourselves with the power and influence granted by powers and influences that enthroned themselves. Huey P. Newton, founder of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, said, quote, "To us, power is first of all the ability to define phenomena, and secondly, the ability to make these phenomena act in a desired manner," end quote. The first phenomena that we must define is the phenomena of self, of identity. This is the power of self-determination. The promised land we seek now is a place where we are free from the bondage of wage slavery, free from having our food and housing held hostage by wealth hoarders. Excuse me, free from the external determinants of who we are, what we are capable of, and what we have a right to do. Free to determine who we are. Those who commit to the labor of self-determination see the vision of the promised land, who hold that vision, who must make it plain. And this is what makes self-determination the ultimate promised land. Now, self-determination means to uproot the indoctrination that took hold while we were sleeping children, unawakened to the realities of consciousness and awareness of ourselves. We absorbed the stories and myths of national identities, gender identities, racial identities, and class identities as irrefutable truths. Self-determination is the necessary resistance that mutes these myths on our tongues, silences their narratives in our streams of consciousness, and amputates them from our bodies. Self-determination is to reject the seductive promise of power over others at the expense of power over ourselves. You know who you are. What shall you name yourself in absence of authorities who claim to know you better than you know yourself? Woo! We ain't at church, but can I get an amen? Woo! We are in for a year, my friends. We are in for it. And that's really the only words that I've been able to conjure up, to say, to describe. I mean, obviously, I've got a lot to say because I've written an entire guide for the year and I've created this presentation, but many of us ask, what does it take? What will it take for change? What will it take for folks to wake up? What will it take for people to see the reality of their own suffering and be sick and tired of it? What will it take? I do think that in these words here, which you can find in the December monthly summary of the 2023 Sidereal Astrology Guide, you can find these words there. And I think that I've made it pretty clear what it's gonna take. Self-determination is to reject the seductive promise of power over others at the expense of power over ourselves. That's what it's going to take. So I'm going to start this looking big picture Those of you who are familiar with divination for liberation and sidereal astrology, my framework, why we do what we do, how we do what we do here, a lot of this terminology will be familiar to you. If you are new here, welcome to Divination for Liberation. Can we welcome the new folks here? There were a lot of names that I did not recognize and people who signed up, so welcome. You have never seen astrology like this. You didn't know astrology was capable of this, and it's not your fault, but we're here to learn you something new today, so welcome, welcome, welcome. So in sidereal astrology, divination for liberation, we're pattern seekers. We want to know what it means together. We want to know the details, but we also want to be able to synthesize and see the big picture and understand what the big picture is communicating so that we don't get lost in the details of binary thinking and individualist perspectives and self only as the reference point for what's happening, right? So I want you to, for this moment, arrest the impulse to ask me what that means for a particular sign. Because understand, we are all under the same sky. I have a different portion that's going to talk about what it means for you specifically based on your signs, multiple with an S, right? But for right now, I've pulled the lens back to start. Excuse me, and this is the bigger picture that holds just as much meaningful information, if not, as far as I'm concerned, the most meaningful information that can be gleaned from examining the astrology for any particular time period or person, but in this, we're talking about 2023. So each of the 12 sidereal zodiac signs are categorized or possess something that I call a tool. You may be more familiar with the word element, but I don't find that that word very clearly articulates exactly what that means and what the function is. So I've renamed elements tools, and you'll see over here, if I can find a little utensil here, you'll see over here to the left, hold on. Tools as behaviors, beliefs, skills, talents, traits, and habits, okay? So this is a collective. What is the collective behavior, right? What are the collective beliefs about how things should be done? What is available to us in terms of tools as skills and talents and traits, right? And collective habits. We're talking about how we define the culture and how the collective culture manifests within this year. And of course, right, this is going to have some relevance for you personally. If you look at this and you've already made sense of what I've shown here, right? We've got fire as the dominant element this year. Why is that not working? Let's see. We've got fire as, no, fire, that didn't work either. Okay, fire as the dominant element here, right? And fire gifts us with entitlement. That's really what I was talking about in what I just read. I'm talking about entitlement, which is about taking up space. And taking up space means you're taking up space in your own mind first. In your own mind, you are taking up space. In your own mind, right? But also, and more directly, I think is how I've often used this word, is that entitlement is about feeling that you have a right to take up space in the minds of other people. You have the right to take up physical space in public. I'm talking to you disabled people, and I'm talking to you folks who have decided that you would like to no longer mask. You have made public space unoccupiable for disabled and immunocompromised people and children who cannot wear masks. And so the entitlement that we have available to us requires what you see here in this red circle to the right. I have at the bottom invalidation, which is the wound of fire, exaggeration of abilities and influences, which is the coping strategy, and entitlement, which is the gift. This entitlement requires exaggeration of abilities and influence, because if we continue as we have been, right, with an earth dominance, and we only perceive the physical material reality, it is what it is, and that's just what is meant to be, right? Then no, I can't take up space because no one's wearing a mask. That's logical. It's very logical. No one's wearing a mask. It is unsafe for me to go in public. Yes, absolutely. And also, I have a right to take up space. I have to exaggerate my abilities and influence as a disabled person. I have to be able to say, even though the physical material reality says that logically, the consequences of me going in public are that I might die. But an exaggeration of abilities and influences means that I can see the material reality of the way that things are, but also demand change. I have a right to, okay? So even when we're talking about workers and the 12,000 people laid off at Google and other tech companies, and stagnant wages and unsafe mentally, physically, emotionally, and psychologically, spiritually unsafe working conditions, entitlement. This is the best news of 2023, that Earth is taking a back seat. And you'll see later that we don't hardly have any Earth. And that is what is going to be the most palpable difference that you feel as we move through 2023. You will feel, you can't feel it yet because we haven't gotten out of this first quarter. But once we get out of the first quarter of 2023, you are going to feel the lack of Earth. You are going to feel your sense of entitlement arising, right? You are absolutely going to feel it. This is the biggest change. Other big change here is that we have air dominant. Air is symbols, language, and imagination. Earth doesn't have any language, right? In a recent live, I talked about Earth as the effect, right, that our body and bodily functions have, meaning that I know, for example, as an infant, what hunger means, not because someone says, oh, you must be hungry when they hear me cry, but because they respond with food. That is the effect of my cry, and my cry is the affect of my body on me, right? So when we get to air, air actually is words. Air is the language that names the experience. So when you get all of these together, sticking with my analogy here, you'll have pain and discomfort in the body for a baby. Cry, these are bodily functions, right? We're born with a sense of entitlement, so we're not going to be quiet when we're hungry. We only be quiet when no one responds, right? And the response is the effect, is the response is how we become aware of and present to what is happening in our body and what it means. And also, the language is what allows us to advocate for ourselves and speak up and name the experience, right? So how are we using language, right, to name our experiences? This is another thing that you heard me talk about in the piece that I just read, right? What shall you name yourself in absence of authorities who claim to know you better than yourself, right? So here we have the wounds, coping strategy, and gifts of imagination, of air signs, or the air tool, right, which is dominating this year. We have being ignored. It means you don't exist. Your body doesn't exist. You as a human doesn't exist, right? And the coping strategy, though, is disassociation. I've put an asterisk here because I mean this in two ways. We have the disassociation of our sense of self from other people. If I am ignored, I will disassociate my sense of self, right, from other people. and associate only with my own mind and imagination, but also disassociation in the more clinical sense of to be absent from self, depersonalization, and to be absent, right, from your own present reality and body, right, dissociation. But imagination is the gift, because whether you are disassociating yourself and your sense of self from, right, others, this is this opposition here, right? Because if fire is the entitlement to take up space in the minds and imaginations of others, right? Air is what happens when we are not, in fact, taking up space in the imaginations of others. We are ignored. So we disassociate our sense of self from the gaze and perceptions, judgment of others, right? These things are normal, natural, right, parts of development, but they are also traumas with a big T, right? So we're talking about trans people, right? We are talking about disabled people, right? This is how we've been surviving, being ignored, okay? So if you know what your dominant tool is in your chart, or you notice that you don't have fire, fire is your least available tool in your sidereal birth chart, and if you are unfamiliar with that, there are resources on my website that can teach you how to calculate these for yourself in your own chart. But if you are missing fire, two things gonna happen for you. You're gonna have a lot of conflict, because if you're missing fire, that means fire is either square, right, or opposed your placements, because you're going to have either earth, air, or water in the place of that. Fire is square water, fire is square earth, and opposed air. So these are external impetuses for change that come in the form of other people's entitlement. What are you gonna do? Right? Remember that when you lack an element in your chart or a tool in your chart, it always comes through other people. You're not meant to have everything. So when we have fire like this, right, what this means is that there are a lot of transits moving through fire signs. And that also means that when those planets come through fire signs, they're representing people in your life. Okay? Same thing with air. If you're missing air, this is your chance, right? What is going on with this? This is mad buggy. Maybe I'm going too fast. If you're missing air, also this is your chance, right? Air is really about seeing things from other people's point of view, not to replace your own point of view, but for you to experience the reality that there are other ways to perceive things. And people who lack air can struggle with this, right? They can take everything very, very, very personally, or they cannot just mind over matter their body, right? Makes me think of Michael Jordan, who has like Moon and Scorpio, Mars and Cancer, something like that. He does have air, Aquarius. So he has all that water and air. And it reminds me of that game he played hungover. He could just mind over matter his body, right? But those of us who lack air struggle to do that, right? Whatever our body says goes, okay? If you lack fire, it might be the same. All of that to say, this is what we're dealing with this year, all right? Let's move on to the next slide. Now, we've got tasks, and you may know these as modalities, right? So these are the kinds of experiences that we're having. So we get the tools from our experiences, right? And then those are the tools that we have, right, in the future. But this is great because when you're lacking something in your own chart, right, these transits give you an opportunity. It's almost like catching rain. You get an opportunity to catch some fire, to catch some air, okay? And let me not leave this out, water. We'll come back to this later because the water we see here is showing up at two very specific points in the year, but we'll come back to that later if we have time. All right, so this is a cardinal and fixed year. 2022 was very mutable, very mutable. We had Mercury retrograde in Virgo, opposing Jupiter in Pisces 3 times over the fall, right? Jupiter has been in Pisces. We had a Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Pisces in 2022, right? So mutable has been all about the collective gaslighting, the inability to form a consensus about what is real and true, the conspiracy theories and skepticism. That's what 2022 has been. I know y'all have been here with me, right? The overt lies. I mean, watching that man, Joseph Robinette Biden, tweet the most egregious lies. It's like, my man, it is not 1952 anymore. You cannot just release a statement and think that people will not know the truth. We got the internet now. We got social media. We got TikTok, man. I mean, come on, right? So this is not to say that we are leaving mutable behind. Jupiter will be in Pisces until April. We will have a Pisces stellium this spring, and we do begin eclipses in Virgo and Pisces fall 2023. So it's not that it doesn't exist. It's just that cardinal is where it is at. Cardinal is, remember, we're talking about task. What's the work to be done? Kinds of experiences inside relationships. What are you working out? Power and control. How do I harness the power to control? Okay, that's what cardinal is about. We've got eclipses in Aries, Libra, Jupiter in Aries, Venus retrograde in Cancer, Libra stellium, Aries stellium. Woo, y'all. Let me not get ahead of myself. We've got the wound of cardinal sign is neglect. Now, this should feel familiar to you as a way to understand what has been happening since Saturn has been in Capricorn, well, from 2020, January 2020 till January 2023, right? Neglect. Right? Coping strategy here is dysregulation. Dysregulation is an attempt to get somebody to help you. If I'm screaming and wilding out, I need help. If I'm crying, I need help. If my nervous system is firing off and I'm in pain, I need help. Something is wrong. Okay? The gift of cardinal signs is regulation, control, right? Taking us through that polyvagal cycle, but also co-regulation is there, right? So control is about our own internal state, but also about feeling like I can control what's happening around me. This is where Aries comes in, feeling like I can control my world. If I pick up a rock, I want it to move. If I say stop, I want you to stop. If I stick my key in the ignition, I want the car to go, right? This is a human need. I need to feel that if I cry, somebody is going to hear me. Someone's going to answer, right? Fixed signs. Oh yeah, let's go. Identity. How do I know who I am? You spend the rest of your life answering that question, but 2023 is going to give us ample time and opportunity to consider, how do I know who I am? The wound of fixed signs, the fixed task is to deal with shame. Shame is who you are is unwelcome. Damn, that's messed up because I need you to survive. If I need you to survive and you tell me that who I am is unwelcome, I cannot not need you. So what do I do to cope with that? Self-abandonment. You say this part of me is unwelcome, I will abandon and not bring that inside this relationship or space. Okay? But authenticity is the gift of fixed sign, right? It's being able to experience the shame and to experience the self-abandonment, but to reclaim yourself and say that how you feel about me is not how I feel about me. Easier said than done when the shame comes in the form of a rebuke, which is death, deprivation, or imprisonment. See these coping strategies as not something that you should avoid or get past. See them as necessary survival mechanisms. We're gonna have to do some self-abandonment. We're gonna be dysregulated this year. We're going to experience neglect and we are going to confront shame. That's just the way that it is. Right? But you can abandon yourself, leave behind, not bring with you parts of yourself that have been deemed unwelcome. You can self-abandon without shaming yourself. I can recognize that I am more likely to get the care that I need if I speak in this voice. If I abandon my deeper, heavier, authoritative, don't fuck with me, direct communicating voice, that's who I am. I'm direct, right? But I can abandon that without shaming myself because I know that in order to survive or get the care I need, I must talk like this. Okay. Let's go on. Take a look, soak it up. Unfortunately, we are not leaving Saturn behind. Saturn will still dominate. Saturn has been dominating, being in its own sign since January 17, 2020. We could go back to 2018, honestly. That's when we had eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn, and we had a Mars retrograde in Capricorn. They are really trying to figure out these captions, are really trying to figure out what Capricorn is. Cap record, capricious, is saying all kind of stuff. Capricorn. Wow. That's crazy. I'm gonna type it. For my people who are deaf. Lord help. Saturn. Disregard, to not gaze upon, to not give attention to not be affected by, to cry and have no one come, to exist and not be seen. That's what Saturn is. Coping strategy, ignorance, 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 ignorance. That which is not seen by others, I cannot see. That which is not responded to by others, I cannot feel. People do not know that they are sick. It's repressed, which is an autonomous survival function. People do not know. They think they just have a headache or a cough that won't go away, or fatigue, or random dizziness, or ringing in their ears. The dots are not connecting because they are being disregarded. A disregarded self disregards itself. A disregarded body is disregarded by the person who has the body. This is how this works. We want to know what it takes. You ever been walking around, living your life, going to work, doing your thing, and going through it, but you just muscling through it? And somebody looks you in the eye and says, hello. And they pause and they say, how are you? And the tears start flowing because you know that was not just pleasantries. You have been regarded. Someone opened themselves to being affected by you, which allowed you to be affected by your own body. Hello, moon. Your moon has not gotten any work. The last time your moon was in the bullseye of the sky was August 2019. That was the last time we have had any significant activity in Cancer. We had a Mercury retrograde in Cancer. Mars was in Cancer. Stellium in Cancer. Instead, we've been on Capricorn. Capricorn has been, there is not enough, so don't even bother to ask for attention, for food, for money, for housing. So when you look at this and you see which planets are dominating this year, what you're looking at is which planets in your own birth chart, which of your own birth chart placements will be activated this year. So you should already be well acquainted with your Saturn. Saturn says no. And we've had a lot of activity with Mars, so this is not as different, but it's gonna have some support that it has not had otherwise, with eclipses and things like that, and Saturn as well being in an air sign. The moon is new. This is new for us. Now, for what it's worth, my theory is that there was a lab leak incident of what eventually became COVID-19, and it occurred during the Cancer stellium sometime in August of 2019. That is my theory. Because it would have taken all of those months for it to become more adept at passing from human to human. and to mutate into a form that was virulent enough and contagious enough to cause a pandemic. Okay, that's my theory. So when we get to, in a little bit here, what is the Venus retrograde in Cancer, it's going to be the first time that we have any activity in that sign. And I think that we might be learning some information. I mean, there's already plenty of information out there about the origins of COVID, about the grants that were written specifically to do the research and work that made COVID be what it is, something called a furin cleavage site. There was a team of folks working out of Wuhan in China who had requested a grant to do work on bat-derived coronaviruses. And they explicitly said that they wanted to put a furin cleavage site into these viruses. And when the pandemic began, that was what was confusing to many scientists and virologists about SARS-CoV-2, that it had this furin cleavage site that is not found in wild type coronaviruses, okay? So we'll get to timing of that in a little bit here. Coddling, gluttony, and embodiment. This is the wound of the moon. The goal of the moon is, hey, you have a body. Hi, I'm here. Hello, body. Do you feel that? You feel that too, don't you? Right? Coddling just means to be fussed over. And that can go left or right, or up or down, right? Being fussed over. Oh, are you hungry? You need something to drink? Is that pillow comfortable for you? Coddling is also, you know, something that can keep us dependent. Talking about Cancer, which is a cardinal sign, so this is about power and control. If I coddle you and give you unending opportunities for a dopamine hit by buying and selling to you multiple things that you don't need, I can make you dependent on me. I can make you keep going to work even though you're sick because you got to buy this and that, right? But coddling is also like, I want to be fussed over. I want somebody to ask me what's for breakfast so I don't have to cook because I'm tired of cooking, right? So these can go anyway. Gluttony, right? Till you've had your fill and even more. These coping strategies are the way that we internalize the wound here. So if the wound is coddling, if we are fussed over or somehow disabled and not given proper opportunities to move and be independently, we internalize that by coddling ourselves, fussing over ourselves, hopefully, right? But also gluttony, too much. That the balance, which we will not always be at, is embodiment. Knowing when you've had enough, taking a moment to listen and feel what you need when you get some discomfort, and not just automatically going for the cigarettes or the doom scrolling or the online shopping or the alcohol, right? Or sometimes going for some CBD or some THC, because you can't be sober in this economy all the time. You won't make it. Right? I'll leave the rest of these to you. I will put this video up on YouTube. Okay. All right, let's go on. Wait, let me check questions before. No questions. Okay, I didn't think so. We've been pretty straightforward here. This is my favorite part of this presentation. This was such a joy to make. Oh, I'm so happy about it. Okay. So what you're looking at here in this column is all 12 of the sidereal zodiac signs. This is in the far left column. And up here, you have each of the 12 months that I just crossed out with my little pen here. Each of the 12 months. I'm so glad you like it. So this is literally a visual of when each sign is active. So you can see here at Aquarius, it's pretty much all year. This is marking the 17th of January onward, and Saturn will be there. We see Aries here pretty much all year. All right. This is actually marking Mercury's entrance into Aries at the end of March, because we will have a Mercury retrograde in Aries. Okay. But Jupiter then will be all year. So you see why Saturn and Mars, right? Because we also have, during this Aries time, eclipses in Aries. Okay, so there's a lot. We got Jupiter in Aries, Mercury retrograde in Aries, eclipses in Aries, stellium in Aries. I'm so glad you like it. It makes me feel very happy. I had so much fun. Oh, and I've got more for you guys. Oh my God, I've got more. Anyways, right? So there's a lot of activity in Aries, and this is why let me do it unless I change my thing. Okay. This is why the Mars meter is up high. Okay. And Saturn meter is up high because Saturn's in its own sign. Okay. They're the boss. Then we get we started off the year with lots of Jupiter, right? We've got Pisces here. This is marking Jupiter in Pisces. A stellium in Pisces. Okay. But once we get to the end of April, when Jupiter enters Aries, we have nothing else in Pisces. And these are the important things to note, because this Pisces house in your birth chart was active the entirety of 2022. So it's like the lights go off for a little while and you got to go tend to some other business. So when you see, right, this moment here, let me go back here, April, March and April, this is when the year switches over, in a sense. This is when things really start to shift, right? And if we bring April and May together, we see we're leaving. We already left behind Capricorn by the end of February. Hallelujah, glory to the name of Jesus. Glory to the name of Texas. That's hilarious. I said Jesus. Anyways, so what do you do with this visual for now, in this moment? As you're thinking of your year ahead, right? We can see that much of what defined 2021 remains in place. Not all of it, but much of what defined 2021 stays in place till the spring. 2021, 2022. Much of what defined 2022 astrologically will remain in place until the spring. Okay. When we get to March, well, end of February, because that's when Mercury, the last planet to leave Capricorn, we had a brief window last spring and summer where there was nothing in Capricorn. But other than that, there has been something in Capricorn since January 2020. That's a big deal. That is a big deal. Elsewhere, I've talked about how basically picking an arbitrary starting point, arbitrary-ish, since 2014, we have been in this, you know, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn ping pong box. Just, you know, Saturn, then Jupiter, you know, then we had eclipses, then Saturn and Jupiter, and eclipses in Sagittarius, and Saturn and Jupiter, and eclipses, and Mars retrograde, you know, Mars retrograde in Scorpio, Mars retrograde in Capricorn. Okay. 2022 was the year that we began our transition into the next set of signs. 2022, we got a taste of Saturn going from Capricorn into Aquarius, right? But now we're at Aquarius, Pisces, Aries. Now, yes, Pisces ends in April, and these little slivers you see are the full moons in these signs, okay? So we get a full moon here in September, but on the other side of 2023, we've got eclipses, right? This Virgo here, September into November, right, is your usual Sun, Mercury, Venus transits through Virgo. Mars will also be in Virgo at this time, but we also have an eclipse in Virgo, right? So once we, again, get to the other side of 2023, eclipses will be switching from Aries and Libra to Pisces and Virgo, okay? When we talk about power, we talk about labor unions, we talk about resistance movements, we talk about breaking the law, becoming ungovernable. This is Aries. We've had Aries previously. We had a Mars retrograde, right? 2020 to 2021. But Saturn was in Capricorn the whole time, cock blocking hard. Okay? So to have all of this Aries with no Capricorn feels real different. I always think of the Capricorn Aries square as the equivalent of you're trying to run, but somebody's got you by the collar. You could actually build up some strength and stamina that way, right? A little resistance training. But also, after a while, you probably should just sit down because you might choke to the point of being not alive, right? So to have all this Aries with no Capricorn, baby, they're taking the bumpers out of the gutter at the bowling alley. So if you don't know how to bowl, stakes are pretty high. You should probably not play. Okay, that's how this works. Right? I think one of the really important things to understand about Capricorn and what it's meant to have bumpers in the gutter, right? What that analogy really means. Saturn entered Capricorn the day that Wuhan shut down, January 23rd, 24th, 2020. China just ended its COVID-0 policy. China and their COVID-0 policy was the bumpers in the gutter. You could be reckless and maskless because China was protecting the entire world. including its own population, by having a COVID-0 policy. Right, Aaliyah says Saturn was our baby gate in the beginning. Absolutely. The baby gate is gone. There is no more. Something like 80% of the Chinese population has been infected with COVID. And to top it off, it's Lunar New Year. And it was Lunar New Year in 2020, where the entirety of Asia is traveling in celebration, that COVID really got wild and crazy. Right? Okay. So we complete this transit of Saturn and Capricorn. We started it with China saying, oops, gotta shut it down. China grew weary of being the adult in the room, as adults often do. But now we have to try to figure out how to ride our little bicycles without training wheels, except for it's in traffic with semi-trucks. Hope you've got your helmet on and you stay very close to the curb, right? Do y'all understand what I'm saying? To have Aries without Capricorn and instead having Cancer. Oh my gosh. To wake up one day and to realize that, like, even though the adult wasn't in the room, the adult had kind of set things up so that you like wouldn't die, right? I mean, they at least left a bowl of water, access to some snacks, and put the knives and lighters away, right? Put little caps on the stove so the children wouldn't hurt themselves, right? That was Saturn and Capricorn. Yes, there was neglect because the adult should have been there in the room with you, having their attention on you. Because you don't just need water and food, you also need love and affection and a sense of safety and belonging. But that's not what we had with Saturn and Capricorn, right? So people are making their out and in list. Capricorn out, Cancer, Aries in. This is the proverbial, I just got fresh legs and I can walk. Where shall I go? Right? But also Cancer, in absence of Capricorn, right, is also this idea that you're feeling things that you were not feeling before. You have an awareness of your body that you did not have before because your body is screaming at you. This is a very challenging square, right? You see Cancer is occupied May till October 1st. How about that? It's May till October 1st. But also Aries is too. So what's happening here? Venus is in Cancer this whole time. Venus will square Jupiter and Aries 3 times. Mars in Cancer will square Jupiter and Aries at the end of May. Okay. This combination of Cancer and Aries is, I've been doing what I wanted to do, says Aries, because I can. who's going to check me, boo? And in comes Cancer, says, hello, hi, I'm your body. Have you met me before? Have you ever felt this before? Jupiter in Aries, while Mars, the ruler of Jupiter, right, the ruler of Aries, is in Cancer. You literally got to check with your mama, and your mama is your body. You literally have to ask for permission. And sometimes mommy will say no. I really see this Cancer as the moment and time that the fallout of repeat COVID infections hits very hard. I see this as a time where the reality, the emotional and relational toll of inflation really hits hard. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about what they're seeing here on this image? Because I could go on to the next slide. Put them in the little question box. I'll repaste here. If you have any questions about this slide. I'm going to come back to this in another way, so just hold tight. But if you have any questions, I'll come back. Let's go to the next slide here. Okay, this is just a little bit, I've kind of already broken this down to you, but this is what's happening. You look at this, right? This image of the signs and what's happening, right, over the course of the year. And here's a little breakdown, right? So you can use what I've presented previously in this presentation to make sense of this. So we've got the first quarter, fixed and mutable, right? That's the Pisces. Jupiter still in Pisces. Pisces still in, and listen, the 2023 Sidereal Astrology Guide goes into the details and gives you the tools to personally apply this. Okay. With that being said, you can see here that Cardinal dominates the entire year. So this year is about power struggles. It is about control. It is about big T trauma and the dysregulation that causes, and the ways that we remedy that: co-regulation, addiction, drugs, alcohol, various forms of gluttony, right? But also Saturn still being in Aquarius, right? And the disregard and invisibility. Do you even exist in the imaginations of those who have the power to answer to your cries? Do they even see you? Right? So this is a big picture overview of what's happening. This line of demarcation here between the first and second quarter is when we really kick into gear, right, of these major themes. And because there's not much mutable going on after the first quarter, you can kind of take that as a sign that we're not arguing about the truth after the first quarter. What we're arguing about is power. And we've already seen that. I'm using a marker point for Saturn's, well, one event, I should say, one event I'm associating with Saturn's entrance into Aquarius is the World Economic Forum taking COVID very seriously. You could not participate if you did not take a PCR COVID test. And if your test was positive, your badge was deactivated and you could not participate. Doors and windows were opened. People were masked. There were UV air sanitizers, disinfectants. There were HEPA air filters in every room. And they told you you didn't need to wear a mask. They told you you could go back to work in 5 days. It's not even a job. And you can't even go to their little talking about what they're going to do with the resources they hoard from the rest of us. Taking COVID very seriously. You're not a capitalist. Right? We haven't even really got to the nitty gritty, right? And let me say this, we had some big time mutable December, right? You know, new moon in Sagittarius, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, Jupiter in Pisces, right? And they're saying gaslighting in the comments because the wound of mutable signs, Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius is gaslighting. Okay? And gaslighting is, you cannot trust this faculty to discern truth, right? Literally saying one thing and doing something else, right? Saying one thing, doing something else. COVID is over. Oh, really? What are those nifty HEPA filters? Oh, you have to PCR test as soon as you arrive? What's that? Oh, you didn't see that. Gaslighting is also, Biden tweeted, I am more excited about our future than ever. Look at all of these jobs. Literally the same day Google lays off 12,000 people after the 13,000 Facebook laid off. Thousands. That's a town of people. That is not a small amount of people, okay? Mars is going to exit its retrograde shadow, and that's right here, okay? Okay, Mars is exiting the retrograde shadow here. This is wrong. I gotta fix this. This is wrong. This should actually be here in March when Gemini, I'll fix that. Anyways, let me write myself a note real quick. Don't want to send y'all off because this is in a lot of different stuff. Okay, so it really should be right here that the Gemini starts, but you see there's this little overlap of Gemini and Pisces, right? And this is taking us back to October, November of 2022 when Mars dipped into Gemini and stationed retrograde, okay? So Mars exits its retrograde shadow in the first quarter and will flirt with a square with Jupiter, but the square actually won't happen until we get here, okay? So second quarter, this is when possibly another infectious disease emerges. We might be seeing a variant out of China or the UK or the US, right? But of the billions of people in China, lots of opportunities for COVID to take an extended vacation in an immunocompromised person, right? Or a person who's been infected multiple times already, okay? So this second quarter, okay? But this is also when the fire starts. And I need you to take away from this that we have not been dealing with that. We've had Sagittarius. We had Sagittarius at the end of 2019 and throughout 2020. We had a little bit of Aries, but again, that was with Saturn and Capricorn. This is gonna feel real different, okay? Eclipse season also at this time. And I should be a little bit more specific because we have a new moon eclipse in Aries and a full moon eclipse in Libra. And actually, Mars is in Gemini at the Aries eclipse, and Venus is in Gemini at the Libra eclipse. So yeah, a little bit more mutable. But when we're talking about Gemini, it's about words. Words mean things, the language that we use to talk about things, the names that we call things. And this is that fire and air, because if we have Venus and Mars in Gemini during these eclipses, Saturn will still be in Aquarius. So we'll have a lot of trines here. So lots of things around language. And we're already seeing a taste of that. Last year, I tweeted, I said, I wonder what we will be calling COVID once Saturn enters Aquarius. And right now, there's some conflict in the scientific community about a person on Twitter naming the XBB.1.5 variant Kraken. And there's some arguments about that, right? That it's fear mongering, or, you know, as I like to say, Aquarius is about I am not. That's not me. Also known as that's not COVID. I'm sick with not COVID, right? So in terms of names, right? You know, does something happen with COVID that we got SARS-CoV-3, right? Or, you know, during Pisces and Gemini transits in 2022, and actually Saturn was in Aquarius at that time, they changed the name of monkeypox, right? They changed it to MPX virus or something like that, right? So language and names, okay? Third quarter. Now, wait, before we do that, Venus is booking. Venus is very far ahead of all of the other planets. So Venus will be in Cancer in the second quarter come May. And already the first of, I don't have it listed here, but the first of 3 squares between Venus and Jupiter happens here. And this is big time COVID stuff. This is big time housing stuff, big time long COVID, folks realizing they're disabled, also the consequences of repeat COVID infections, so on and so forth. We get our second Mercury retrograde here, which is in Leo, all fire signs. So that's why there's so much fire this year, right? Mars is ahead in Leo, so that opposition will already be happening in July. More cardinal, but the fixed comes in because there's going to be Mercury retrograde in Leo, Mars in Leo. Venus actually stations retrograde in Leo, okay? So if we go back to this slide here, you'll see Leo is starting all the way at the end of June, even though the sun won't enter Leo until mid-August, but that's because Venus and Mars are kind of ahead of the pack here, traveling together for a while, okay? So our 3 Mercury retrogrades are in Aries during the second quarter, Leo in the third quarter, and Mercury will station retrograde in Sagittarius, but this will lead us into our 2024 Mercury retrogrades, which are in water signs. So part of the last Mercury retrograde of the year will be in Scorpio, okay? One of the juicy things, okay, first of all, let me put it to you this way. People like to ask me when we get to catch a breath or get a break or something. Your break is now. Your chill is now. Your rest is now. And I am incredibly sorry if you are not resting right now, if things are on fire for you. But this is as calm as it gets for 2023, because the onslaught of the astrology this year is relentless. 2022 is going to look like the kiddie carnival. Okay. We get to the fourth quarter and we're ending Aries Libra eclipses, beginning Pisces Virgo eclipses. Mars opposite Jupiter. This is a big one occurring at the Libra eclipse, the last eclipse, going out with a bang, and a Libra stellium. Okay. And then this Sun conjunct Mars is important. This is occurring in Scorpio. And this is really important because, as you can see here, Mars has been retrograde in Taurus. Mars has been in Taurus since August, first of all. Give me a break. Jesus on the cross. And we literally only get a short break here and a short break here, you know, until we get the break the rest of the year. Lord, my Taurus house needs a serious reprieve and rest, but it ain't coming. Anyways, I made note of this Mars Sun conjunction because it's happening in Scorpio while Jupiter is in Aries. That is the last 2 months of the year. That's how I ended up writing that piece for December, because, you know, when I write the summaries and stuff, I got my spreadsheets up to see what dates aspects are having. I've got a chart that I'm moving in real time. I'm looking back at previous summaries. I've got my calendar up, so on and so forth. I'm reading the fill in the blanks, and I get to December and I'm like, holy shit. Like, there is not an ounce of earth in the sky. We are full-blown air and fire. And then we get to November, December, and we get this Sun-Mars conjunction. Now, for those of you who are new here, Venus is the police. Venus is the morality police, like we're seeing this Mars retrograde in Taurus and the resistance in Iran around, the morality police. Right? The morality police is women do this, men do that. You're a man if you have this. That's morality. If you're a real man, the right thing to do is, and if you should serve your husband a plate and not do that, right? All of these rules, right? That's Taurus. Venus retrograde in Taurus conjunct the sun the day that the 45th president had that photo op in front of the church and had the military, you know, shooting rubber bullets and, you know, pepper spraying protesters. That's Venus. Venus is the status quo. Venus is, if you are one of us, you are going to behave this way. If you want us to accept you, you need to look like this. That's Venus. Mars, on the other hand, is resistance. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Sidereal Aries rising with Jupiter and Aries on the ascendant. He broke the law on purpose. He could not say, oh, the right thing to do is just follow the rules. The rules were depriving him of life and livelihood. So he broke the law. That is Mars. Mars is autonomy. Mars is freedom. Mars is because I can. Mars is becoming ungovernable. Mars is, I don't care if you don't like me, I like me. Mars is transness. Mars is blackness. Mars is anything that deviates from the status quo of whiteness, capitalism, and patriarchy. That's what this is talking about. When we're talking about Scorpio, we are talking about emotional autonomy. I have a right to feel how I feel when I feel what I feel because my life depends on it. I will die if I don't feel my body, literally. All of that to say, as I said before, we are in for it. And I hope you get in with it. I hope that you grow a tolerance for discomfort that is required for change. Being born hurts everybody involved. So what are we going to birth this year? What's the pain tolerance? One thing I've learned, because this previous, 2020 through 2022 has had a lot of Taurus going on because that was the Taurus Scorpio eclipses. We had a Venus retrograde in Taurus and a Mars retrograde in Taurus. And what I learned is that people cannot tolerate being disliked and left out. And they are willing to die to be included and to be liked. And this is different than the survival-based reliance upon other people that causes us to work through these contradictions of acceptance and autonomy. Okay, I think that's my last slide here. Now, I am going to stop this share. And I am going to start another share. And of course, give me a second here. All right, so this is what I've been working on, y'all. I have created these images. So this is all one file. And this is your big picture overview for the year. So you'll see here, and let me scroll down to these instructions. Okay. And I'm just going to read these instructions for you because it'll tell you what's going on here. And let me zoom in because that's small. Where is this here? Okay. These horoscopes are meant to be accurate only for your sidereal rising sign, also known as the AC, and your sidereal moon sign. Use the instructions at this link here to cast your sidereal birth chart, there will be a box in the chart like the one below, listing out each placement and the sign it occupies. You find your moon and rising sign here. Okay, so you find your moon sign. This is just a sample chart, right? And then these are the same instructions from the guide, okay? So you find your moon sign and your ascendant, and you can match the glyph here. So that's Aries, and this is Aquarius, right? So that means if this was your chart, you would be reading for Aries and Aquarius. Now, for my students here, if you know your lot of fortune, yes. If you have a stellium, yes. You can also read for your solar return rising sign, okay? But for those of you who are beginning, just start here, okay? Number 2, and number 2 table is what you've already seen, okay? This table uses color-coded meters to show the proportion with which each tool is active this year. The white circles above the tool, oh wait, I skipped number 2, that's number 3, oops. Number 2, this table shows which signs are active with planetary activity over the course of the year. And what I've done here in the far left column is list out the house numbers, okay? There is 1 sign per house. Use the house meanings table to determine what topics are in focus and when based on this table. So for this person over here, and I should have matched this, I'll switch it so that everything looks right. But anyways, you can download this in my store. It's gonna be $5, okay? That's it, $5. You can download this thing for yourself as soon as I put it up, okay? So this sample of Cancer rising, right? First house is hot to trot, right? So I would go to my houses table here and say, oh, okay. So what's that mean? What am I focused on during that time? Me and my body, okay? Actions I take, things that happen to me, my impact on my relationships, my face, my head, my mouth, my teeth. Very good. Okay, number 3. Now, I'm gonna pause here for my Div for Lib students. This is new, and I'm very excited to share with you. You know, I'm always coming up with something else. So here's 3 down here. You've already seen this, okay? This table uses color-coded meters to show the proportion with which each tool is active this year. The white circles above the tool name what each tool means. So here are your white circles above the tool. Water is body and bodily functions. Fire is entitlement. Air is symbols, language, imagination, and earth is physical material reality, okay? The white circles above the tool names say what each tool means in practice. The black ovals say what house group the tool falls in for the sign the horoscope is for, okay? So these are new. You have never seen these before. You have never heard these before. They came from my brain, okay? So water signs are going to include Pisces, Scorpio, and Cancer for Cancer rising. That is 1, 5, and 9. This belongs to the self group of houses, okay? Keep that in your mind. See table 4. Well, what is table 4, Dayna? Table, oh, I gotta fix that, table 5. See, this is why I didn't put it up in my store yet, because I knew I would find mistakes, even though I've proofread this like 3 times, but that's okay. So let's do this one. right? We have a fire dominance this year, entitlement. Fire houses for Cancer rising, Leo, 2. Sagittarius, 6. Aries, 10. Fire focus for Cancer is entitlement and nurturance. And here's your question. How are you cared for by yourself and others? How are you participating in the caretaking of others? This will be the same for all water rising signs. So for Scorpio, Pisces, and Cancer, your fire focus this year is on nurturance, the entitlement to nurture and be nurtured. Okay? I've done the same thing with the air focus. Okay? And then let's go up here. Table 4, or number 4. This table uses color-coded meters to show the proportion with which each task is active this year. The white circles to the left of the task name what task names, say what each task means, in practice, right? Cardinal, power and control. So we saw this. We saw this in the presentation, okay? And then you got to see table 5, because the black ovals beneath the task names say what house group the task falls in for the sign the horoscope is for. So the cardinal task for Cancer is embodiment. And you can't see it here, but I wrote what that means here, okay? Identity is the fixed tasks, right? And that goes with sustenance, 2, 8, 11, and what did I miss? 2, 5, 8, 11, right? Who and what feeds you. So this is your big picture overview for the year. And if you are clever, you can come up with 50 different ways to use this horoscope, okay? So there's all 12 signs here. These are your house meanings, and I've laid out just the questions by themselves, what each of the house groups mean. So the new labels that for the houses that I'm introducing in this are the self houses 1, 5, 9, right? So these houses all share the same tool. If your Cancer rising 1, 5, 9 is water, how do you manage the self that shows up in the exterior world of your life with your body and bodily functions, right? Okay. Houses 2, 6, and 10 are nurturance. If you're Cancer rising, right, that is going to be fire. How are you cared for by yourself and others? How are you participating in the caretaking of others? Houses 4, 8, and 12 are roots. Again, if you are Cancer rising, that is going to be air. How are you rooting yourself in place to establish social and material security? And then other is going to be earth, but I didn't get into that in these because earth is not occupied this year like that, okay? So this is what each sign looks like here, folks. All 12 signs, $5. It'll be in my store after I fix these eras. Happy 2023, y'all. Did I miss any questions over here? Oh, there are some questions. Okay, I like questions. Hold on. Right here. Okay. What happens in the brief period in March when Earth ends, for lack of a better word, and fire begins? Very good. So on a technical level, Marisa, this is going to mean that your Capricorn house goes quiet a little bit, right? But your Capricorn house goes quiet. There is no major activity in Capricorn for the rest of the year. Okay, so if you look at the 2023 Sidereal Astrology Guide, there is a page there that says planets and transits. As a matter of fact, let me pull that up. Let me find it. Here we go. Okay, so you see this. This is from the 2023 Sidereal Astrology Guide, Planets and Transits. If there's no activity in a house or a sign, because they're the same, right? That means your focus is elsewhere, right? You're narrating or amplifying another area, right? The activity is elsewhere. So for you, Capricorn rising, right? I know that's very important to answer this question, right? For you, this really means that the pressure is off of you in a lot of ways. It really is. Think about this too, because I know you have a pretty earth dominant chart, Marisa. You get to work with something else in your chart, right? I think you have a lot of fortune in Aries. You don't have no fire, so it's good for you. It's good for you. I hope that makes sense. Please don't feel like you have to answer this now, and I don't want to derail this session, but I am wondering what other years in history look similar to this, the slide with the, oh no, that ain't happening, because there ain't no other year. I've already started my research on the 2023 Aries ingress, and it wasn't. Normally, I could find at least 2 or 3 years that have similar ingress charts of placements that I'm looking for, and it really was not happening. I did not find, I went back to 1800 and I did not find one Aries ingress chart that had Pisces rising with Jupiter in Pisces. So there is a lot of not having a reference point for this year. Y'all know how I love that word unprecedented, and then they started using it in the media, but that's where we are, unprecedented. There are a few that have some similar placements, and I will be going into that later, but you know, there's that. In general, how do you feel about the state of air travel in August? I don't feel that air travel is safe. It is a crapshoot in general. Your flight might get canceled, the pilot might die, you know. I'm just being honest. Air travel is not safe right now. Now, for those of you who do have to travel, the Mercury retrograde in Aries, that's going to be another nasty one, because Mars is going to be in Gemini and Cancer. That is not July, August, that is April, May. We're out of the Mercury retrograde window in July, August. But my challenge and issue with July, August actually has more to do with infectious disease. I can't give you a good answer to this, because I'm the person that does not get on the airplane. And I don't get on the airplane unless I have to, and I have not had to, so I don't. So my caution is that high. I literally told people to stay home during the Mercury retrograde. There were 2 different bouts of canceled flights. I mean, it was horrendous. I bet you some people still haven't reunited with their luggage and their belongings and medications. So I can't give you no good answer on that. Astrologically, it's a crapshoot. What are the implications of the lack of Earth in the skies for those who are also lacking Earth in their charts? So I would look and see what elements or tools are dominating your chart. And so then you can see what's being reinforced, right? Because when there was a lot of Earth, especially in this past year, that meant that your placements were likely being square and opposed, right? So if you have water, Earth opposed your signs, and if you have fire and air, it would square your signs. And there's 2 different natures of squares there that I won't go into here, but I would actually be focusing on what is being reinforced, right? Because a vacuum is being made, so you don't have that challenge. And reinforcement isn't good and reinforcement isn't bad. It really just depends. Okay, so I would focus on what's dominating your chart and how does that line up with the elements that are dominating this year. And then you can look at the houses, right? And I'm giving you a lot of tools here to do that. Can you explain more about the labor unions and what it means for management and workers? Absolutely. So Aries and Libra are the signs that that I associate with, you know, workers' rights. And for me, this really started in earnest in terms of what we're seeing now, you know, this resurgence in the formation of labor unions, but also the resurgence of union busting, right? There was an eclipse in Aries in spring of 2022 that had Mars in Aquarius, you know, just as Saturn was dipping into Aquarius. And what this is really about is self-identification. It's about self-determination, because the largest barrier to labor organizing is that people don't identify as a worker. People identify as capitalist or capitalist in training. And a capitalist is somebody who owns the means of production and culls the value, C-U-L-L-S, culls the value, takes the value produced by worker labor. If you do not have the power to hoard and take the excess value of your workers' labor, then you're not a capitalist. And what that means is once you pay for the price of raw materials, which includes the labor of your workers, you get whatever profit that remains from that. Okay? Okay? So the barrier here is about self-identifying as a worker. And people don't want to identify as a worker because they want to be in solidarity with people whose position they envy. Okay? Look at what's happening already. Layoffs are at an all-time high, right? And a lot of this preempts labor organizing. You have to see these layoffs as union busting, right? Who are you in absence of authority figures to tell you who you are? Okay, I hope that made sense here. That was the last question. All right, y'all. I've used up all of my energy that I've had for this today. And so I'm going to